Ring, ring, ring. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. What are you doing? And welcome back to Krown's magical peasant cave.
What the hell was that? Came out of nowhere. Welcome back to the Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy, lovely start to this nice Thursday morning over here from an island deep within the sun right now. And there is actually something new to be speaking about today. Not on the lower term timeframes, as that is more or less the same, but I wanted to go over something on the higher term timeframes, the monthly look that is new, that is something of, at least in my opinion, interest for the macro, and perhaps you might find it interesting as well. So with that said, let's just jump on it into it without further ado. And we're going to bring you over here to the monthly look on the monthly accumulation distribution indicator chart right here. So I use this indicator for multiple different reasons. One, to, identify around the macro lows that essentially correlates to a shift in the slope, essentially a slope change in the extremes. But today, what I want to go over is something that we've been alluding to several times in the past half year to a year now, as to when to essentially expect around the macro low. So a couple of things of interest here, but first let me explain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark off when the indicator itself turns red, as you can see. So for example, this happened on this point right here between January and February of 2020. You get your first tick of red. What I do from that price point is I take the high of that, couple months, and then I measure to the next major low, the next macro low, if you will, as that essentially is what it is. And that correlates to all these measurements that you see right here. This was 2018. This was 2020. This was, of course, 2014, 2015. And this over here was 2012, basically. And what we've seen is that on average, and you can just eyeball this yourself, 50% correction, 64.5, basically 57 and 62.5% correction right there. We found that on average, there's been an average correction about 61.34%. What's very interesting about this, and we've been looking at this for a long time now, basically since I think it was May to June of this year. So maybe not the last 6 months, but like the last almost 6 months actually now, as we head into the end of the year, is that we've been saying that, hey, around that average correction is when you would theoretically be looking at it as, potentially putting in a major macro low as far as percentage term goes. Now, that's not necessarily a timing factor, but it is a price factor, essentially, meaning that we're looking for around the price that we'd expect. And what do you know? As of right now, we actually have seen that full correction play out, basically. The average correction, again, 61.34 versus about 61.63 here for what is the current low. I'd say that that's, about bang on. Bitcoin has a low of 15,563, and yeah, that would be basically 15,486. So very, very close right there. And so from a percentage perspective, that would kind of make sense. We're in the ballpark here. We're in the ballpark. So I do want to once again state that if you are very long-term time frame minded, I do think that Bitcoin is very close to a, percentage-wise low here than not. Like, we've seen the majority of this correction very likely, in my opinion. The question is timing and where could a stray wick land? Like, is there going to be something a little bit lower potentially? I mean, that's definitely possible, obviously. But to take it one step further, as you can see on this chart over here, this horizontal green line actually correlates incredibly well when it intersects with the accumulation distribution indicator itself into calling basically around the low as well. Now, I haven't marked off these specific points, so I'll just actually do that right now. It's going to kind of destroy my chart, but whatever. But I'll just do it so that we can see, and then I will undo the changes. But let's just do this in the moment, so it might not be exactly perfect, but it'll be close enough. So again, I'm just going for the intersection between the green horizontal and then where that meets the accumulation distribution indicator. So let me get rid of this one, boom, and then this one right here as well. And what do you know? All of these essentially correlate, not this one is obviously high, apologies, but all of these essentially correlate, very close to the actual low itself. Does it sometimes wick a little bit lower? Yeah, it does. But as far as a closing basis, very, 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 very close. And same thing on this one over here as well. That would have been basically at about $18,000. So, between 16 to 18,000 bucks, like, it's not a humongous change, to be fair, especially when we're talking about macro moves, but I did think that was rather interesting. Also, and perhaps, and probably like the least impressive thing, or least important thing I should say about this, is that we do have a trend line connecting the July 15 lows, or 2015 lows basically, to the 2018-2019 lows, which would also be be meeting the accumulation distribution indicator right here, theoretically, if we see a slope change coming into December. So these next, we have like 12, 13 days left of November are going to be very, very telling. If we start to see a positive slope coming into December, that'd be the sort of the next major thing on the macro that I'd be looking for to say, hey, we're very close to a macro low here. And despite people, including myself, looking for, a little bit lower, ultimately, I do think that if you are very long-term minded, probably closer to a low here than not. So my sort of main message of the day is hey, if I'm looking at it from this lens, from a statistical lens, well, don't lose sight of the forest for the trees, or the trees for the forest, or whatever the fuck the saying is. I don't know. Frank Ignos will be out there, hopefully, correcting me, because he always is, but we need him because otherwise I'm just going to butcher all these fucking sayings, man. Just something to be aware of for the long term, of course. Does that mean it's always going to hold to fruition like this, or hold true to like this? No, I mean, 3 times or 4 times is like really not like super impressive or super compelling, but it's the best that we can do given the 13, 14-year history of Bitcoin now. Anyways, with that said, let's actually go into the lower term timeframes here and basically look at the same things we've been looking at for the past like week or so now, I guess. And that is this lower term time frame, again, only relevant to the lower term time frame. The ranges are the same as yesterday, basically 19,650 to the I did it again. Dyslexia is very difficult. 16,960 is the range highs for the short-term timeframes versus the range lows, which would be, if you're on the lower-term timeframes, about 16,100. If you're on the medium-term timeframes, which also kind of correlates to the higher-term timeframes, that would be 15,350, or basically 400. We'll round up right there. This is relevant only to CME, however. Keep in mind there is a discount on CME versus spot price action, so these numbers will be slightly higher on spot price action, but on CME, I just find that these sort of ranges, these sort of signals, they play out more often, more importantly, and they just are more dependable. So in this case, what do we have here? Well, with the advent of the price action for the last 24 hours, we have yet another potential for 3 drives now of hidden bearish divergence. How would you confirm 3 drives of hidden bearish divergence? Need to confirm this current price action right here as a local high. How would you confirm this as a local high? Bitcoin needs to come back down and close below 16,400 again on CME. If you're a little more conservative, you'd probably be looking at like 16,200 or so. But ultimately, that would confirm 1, 2, 3 drives of hidden bearish divergence right here as 4-hour RSI continues to make higher highs alongside seemingly lower highs on price action, and the 6-hour I think even has it in place as well. Yeah, it would have it in place 1, 2, 3 drives here of potential hidden bearish divergence. Again, this is only relevant if Bitcoin comes back down and closes below that level. And again, if you want to be super conservative, and I even think that it might be relevant to be more conservative in this case, you'd be looking at about 16,200 on a 4-hour closure. Referencing stochastic momentum, and then we'll talk about what sort of closures would correlate with what. The 12-hour time frame is actually currently pivoted at 15,900. So momentum on the 12-hour continues to run to the upside as long as Bitcoin's above that price action. However, this is a corrective signal with volatility contracting. 6-hour time frame is going to be turning down below 16,580, which currently Bitcoin's about $50 above right now. 4-hour time frame is going to be turning up as long as Bitcoin's above 16,230. So again, that's that very low term time frame pivot or around there. The hourly time frame is going to be loading and turning down as long as Bitcoin's below 16,770. So again, we're seeing bifurcation in all these signals. What has that meant throughout this past week? More sideways, and that's exactly what we've gotten. It's more and more sideways. 4-hour and 6-hour time frame BBWP, however, again representing volatility, does look like we've seen the majority of this contraction phase play out. So the majority of that corrective move is probably over. So are we looking for a move today or tomorrow, meaning today Thursday or tomorrow Friday? Very likely yes. I would say probably more likely on Friday, to be fair. So what ranges correlate with what in this case? So if we do see a break to the upside, meaning a 4-hour closure above 16,950, or an hourly, I believe it was above about 17,250, then I'd be looking for another retest somewhere around the range highs, which would be around the 0.5, maybe as much as the 618, which would put Bitcoin between about 17,600 all the way up to maybe even north of 18,000. And to the downside, well, obviously, if Bitcoin confirms a local high, then we probably get another run back down to the bottom side of the range at 15.4, again on CME. And then if there's any sort of, especially a higher term time frame closure below 15,400, that's at the point where I'd really be looking for Bitcoin to play out that next continuation move to the downside. And we're probably looking somewhere between $13,500 to $13,000 even before the next sort of higher term time frame bounce. Of course, there's going to be bounces along the way on the lower term timeframes, but that's essentially what I'd be looking for right there. I want to reiterate my stance on the higher term timeframes, however, here. I would be very happy. No, I'd be very willing to call this a bear trap and very likely Bitcoin, trading back up towards 20,000 plus if Bitcoin does one of two things. One, Bitcoin closes a weekly above $18,000 on CME, or two, if Bitcoin closes a daily above 18,500, again on CME. If one of those two things happens, that looks pretty damn good to me, and very likely does pop back up north of $20,000. And just to briefly follow up on the 2-day signal, I won't go through the full explanation of this, but for the people who have been on this channel for a while now, what I want to follow up on here is the new momentum pivot. The momentum pivot is now 20,220. So that is to say that as long as Bitcoin is closing the 2-day time frame below that level, the probabilities are still in favor of continuation to the downside. Yes, we've already kind of hit the first target of this, so the second target would really only be initiated if Bitcoin closes below, again, this range low over here, 15,400 on CME. And that would be kind of like that 13 to 13,500 region, but something to be aware of as of right now, I suspect as well. So I think that's a good place to be leaving off on this particular video. That's basically all I want to be saying today. Once again, I want to remind everyone that next week we're going to have a secret Black Friday sale, as everyone probably. So if you can, hold off on potentially purchasing anything for at least another 7 days or so, and it'll be about 20% less, perhaps. Other than that, good place to leave this one off. I want to be wishing you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.